The Rock was supposed to be untouchable. For years, he was Hollywood's golden giant, the iron-willed wrestler turned box office machine, the motivational icon who seemed to embody grit, discipline, and authenticity. But lately, the cracks in that image have been widening into fractures that even he can't ignore. His story is no longer just about muscles and movies, it's about trust, and what happens when an empire built on an image starts to collapse. He didn't begin as Hollywood royalty. Before the film studios and Forbes covers, Dwayne Johnson was the people's champion. In the WWE ring, he was electric, larger than life, firing off catchphrases that etched themselves into pop culture forever. "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?" became a rallying cry, and every eyebrow raise sent crowds into hysteria. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was charisma weaponized. By the time he left wrestling, he'd claimed more than 10 world championships and a fan base that spanned continents. For most people, that would have been the peak. For him, it was just the opening act. Hollywood opened its doors wide. He smashed through with Jumanji, racking up nearly $1 billion, the Fast and Furious franchise pulling in billions more, and Moana charming its way past $680 million worldwide. Studios couldn't get enough. He wasn't just a bankable star, he was the most bankable star. Forbes crowned him year after year as the highest paid actor alive, with his peak hitting $120 million in a single year. For a while, it looked like he could do no wrong. From the ring to the screen, he built an empire on relentless work, positivity, and the kind of physique that left audiences stunned. On Instagram, his influence reached planetary scale. Over 400 million followers watched his every move. His posts weren't just pictures, they were sermons. Carefully portioned meals, insane gym sessions at 4:30 in the morning, motivational captions about grinding harder than anyone else. He preached hustle and consistency like a religion, and millions believed. For fans, he wasn't just another celebrity. He was proof that discipline and clean living could turn anyone into a giant. To magazines like Time, he wasn't just successful, he was influential. A cultural force listed again and again among the most important people on Earth. And that's where the danger began. Because when you build your brand on being the hardest worker in the room, the most disciplined man alive, the one who can outgrind anyone, even the tiniest crack in the story can trigger an earthquake. That earthquake hit at the Venice Film Festival in September 2025. He walked onto the red carpet for the premiere of The Smashing Machine, and instead of applause for his role, the noise was about his body. Fans were shocked. Gone were the bulging arms and comic book bulk. He looked leaner, smaller, diminished. It was as if decades of muscle had evaporated in a matter of months. The whispers spread instantly, exploding into a roar across social media. Steroid allegations, once shrugged off, came back with a vengeance. Fitness influencers dissected every new photo, every angle of his shrinking frame. Greg Doucette went viral mocking the transformation, quipping that The Rock had turned into a pebble. He didn't stop at jokes. He laid out the evidence, pointing to a loss of 50 to 60 pounds of muscle in mere months as a telltale sign of someone cycling off steroids. No movie role, no age-related slowdown could explain that kind of rapid drop. To Doucette, the transformation was a confession. Silent, but loud. He wasn't alone. Joe Rogan fired off bluntly on his podcast, "Not a chance in hell he's clean." Rogan dismantled Johnson's old story about trying steroids once at 18 and never again, calling it flat-out nonsense. He drew comparisons between The Rock of the 1990s, big but believable, and the middle-aged version who looked superhuman, almost cartoonish. "That doesn't happen naturally," Rogan said, and fans latched onto the words. Derek from More Plates, More Dates gave it a clinical edge, breaking down hormones, TRT, growth hormone, and nandrolone. To him, Venice wasn't about artistic sacrifice, it was about biology crashing after stepping off a chemical cycle. Even American Thor, a strongman turned influencer, added fuel. For him, the issue wasn't even the drugs, it was the deception. He argued that The Rock had built an empire selling an impossible dream, an illusion that clean eating and hard work could turn anyone into a superhero. To millions of fans, Johnson wasn't just a star. He was a mentor, an idol, the symbol of discipline. If steroids were part of the picture, then everything he preached, the grind, the hustle, the discipline, was a lie. Thor compared him directly to the Liver King scandal, a carefully packaged fantasy sold to people desperate for hope. Johnson fought back, framing his smaller size as a choice, not a slip. He said slimming down was necessary to portray Mark Kerr, the MMA fighter infamous for his own steroid struggles. It wasn't weakness, he claimed, it was art. Dedication to his craft, not detox. But critics weren't buying it. Duquette tore apart the excuse with venomous sarcasm, asking if anyone really believed Johnson had to lose 60 pounds of muscle just to play a juiced-up fighter. That's not art, he said. That's biology. Rogan doubled down too, pointing out that if Johnson truly had nothing to hide, why not release blood tests? Why only talk, never prove? As the steroid fire raged, another wound ripped open, the Maui Fund scandal. In August 2023, wildfires ripped through Hawaii, destroying communities and displacing thousands. In the aftermath, Johnson and Oprah Winfrey launched the Maui People's Fund, pledging $5 million each. They urged the public to join in, asking everyday people to contribute, with suggested donations as high as $1,200 a month. At first, it sounded like leadership, but the glow didn't last. Backlash exploded. Ordinary families struggling with bills couldn't believe two near-billionaires were asking them to shoulder the burden. One furious post went viral. The Rock could buy Maui, but he's asking us for money. The outrage wasn't just about money, it was about tone. While inflation crushed households, the optics of two of the world's richest figures urging the struggling to give more was almost insulting. Questions swirled about transparency. Where exactly was the money going? Why weren't Johnson and Winfrey covering the cost themselves? Silence from Johnson only deepened suspicion. To critics, it looked like another case of polished PR covering deeper contradictions. Just like the steroid saga, he dodged proof, relied on polished explanations, and left fans with more questions than answers. When you put the two scandals side by side, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Steroids shredded the idea of honesty in his physique. The Maui Fund fractured the image of generosity. Together, they painted a picture of illusions, of a man who marketed discipline, clean living, and altruism, but whose actions suggested something else. Greg Doucet's comparison to Liver King hit harder than most realized. It wasn't about substances, it was about trust, and once trust cracks, it rarely heals. The Rock's story is now bigger than one man's reputation. It's about the collapse of an archetype Hollywood has carefully crafted for decades. The flawless hero, the untouchable giant, the disciplined machine who embodies values fans cling to. Johnson's fall showed how fragile that image really is. Fans don't demand perfection, they demand authenticity. And when the curtain pulls back, revealing something different than what they were sold, the backlash is ruthless. What stung most wasn't the muscles or the money, it was the sense of betrayal. Fans who once saw him as a living embodiment of integrity now wonder if the entire empire was smoke and mirrors. For them, the question isn't whether Johnson used enhancements or misjudged a fundraising campaign. It's whether he ever told the truth at all. Was he really the hardest worker in the room, or just the best marketer? Was the people's champion ever really for the people, or was it always for the brand? Public trust is a fragile currency. Muscles fade, wealth evaporates, movies flop, but honesty holds value. If Johnson had admitted to medical help or been transparent with charity funds, he might have kept the crown. Instead, his silence and polished denials became weapons used against him. Now, every Instagram post looks curated, every smile looks scripted, every motivational caption feels hollow. The very foundation he built, discipline, authenticity, positivity, has been turned into evidence for the prosecution in the court of public opinion. Fans are left asking the haunting question, can The Rock ever reclaim the trust he's lost? Or is the fracture permanent? His empire isn't just films and followers, it's the illusion of invincibility, the promise that discipline alone can defy age, time, and reality. Once that illusion cracks, rebuilding is almost impossible. The mask has slipped and the world is watching every move. The lesson is brutal but clear. In today's skeptical world, transparency is the only shield that truly lasts. Because when billionaires ask the struggling to donate, when superhuman physiques look suspiciously unsustainable, the hypocrisy cuts deeper than any scandal. It's not just about Dwayne Johnson anymore, it's about what fans demand from their idols, and how quickly admiration can turn to ridicule when the truth, or even the suspicion of truth, comes out. The Rock's story has become a warning. Empires built on image can rise higher than anyone imagined. But when they fall, they crash even harder. And that's the paradox that lingers. For decades, The Rock inspired millions to grind harder, push further, believe in themselves. But the scandals turned that inspiration into a mirror reflecting doubt, deception, and disillusionment. The people's champion may still walk red carpets and headline films, but to many, he no longer feels like theirs. He feels like a brand. And once fans see you as a brand instead of a human, the connection that made you untouchable begins to disappear. The world hasn't written off Dwayne Johnson yet, but the trust he's lost will be harder to rebuild than any muscle he's shed. In the end, this isn't just a fall from grace. It's a case study in how quickly the ground shifts under even the most powerful feet. Because the real foundation of any hero isn't strength, money, or fame, it's honesty. And once that cracks, no empire can stand tall for long.